Hello everyone, and welcome to Autocrat, and this is a bonus episode called Fourth Rome. This is because it's April Fool's Day today, or April 1st, 2024. Now, April 1st is a date that's come up a few times in Roman history. Do you want to give us a few examples?
Sure. In about this date in 285, Carinus dies at the Battle of Margus, leaving Diocletian sole emperor.
Okay, Diocletian, the end of the 3rd century crisis.
Majorian was made emperor by Ricimer with the backing of Leo I in 457.
Yeah.
Alexios I succeeded Nicephorus III in 1081.
Okay.
So what are we going to talk about today?
Well, it's the idea of imperial succession, as the term Fourth Rome might have given away. And this is because, highly connected to this concept, is the idea of the Third Rome. So in the 1500s, the idea emerged in Russia that Moscow was the so-called Third Rome. And this idea is connected to the idea of a crown which is limitless in its extent. After Constantine I, Christianity and the Roman Empire became highly intertwined. Now, there were two halves, West and East, and the Western Roman Empire would essentially fall and, in the eyes of some, be refounded by Charlemagne in the year 800. So this is what would become the Holy Roman Empire. However, the East would continue on and considered itself the successor to the Roman Empire of antiquity, which makes sense. There's emperors continuously from that date with no interruption. However, 1453 saw the end of the Eastern Roman Empire as it fell to the Ottomans. This was a collapse which, at the time, Pope Nicholas V would see as divine punishment for the unity of the churches at Florence not being respected. But that whole debate for us is not for a long, long time, so we can leave the idea of church unity being responsible for the fall of the empire for another time. Now, the question arose in the minds of Christians in the East. Could Christianity carry on without the empire? Do you want to take it from here?
Yeah. There are three possible ways that the narrative of a Christian imperial structure could be maintained.
Yep.
Firstly, there's the idea that the Roman Empire's fall was not permanent and that the Russians could liberate Constantinople.
Right.
The first idea does have some following in later centuries. When the second son was born to Maria Fyodorovna, Catherine the Great named him Constantine in April 1779.
Okay.
She was the second wife of Paul, the son of Catherine II by Peter III, and emperor between 1796 and 1801.
Okay.
This was at the instigation of Potemkin. The idea was that he would become ruler of Constantinople after the Ottoman Empire collapsed.
Right, so we've got Constantine, son of Paul and Maria, and grandson of Catherine the Great, and the idea is he will become the ruler of a new Constantinople.
Yep.
Okay.
During the Napoleonic Wars, Alexander I asked Napoleon for Constantinople during the negotiation.
Right.
Napoleon responded that Constantinople was the global imperium.
Okay, so he couldn't give it up, essentially. Or he couldn't give it to them.
Exactly.
Yep.
So both Russia and France had thought about the first of the three ideas.
Okay. The second of the three options is that Russia could kowtow to the Holy Roman Empire as it being the imperial authority. And the third idea is that Moscow could think of herself as the successor to the Roman Empire. And this idea is often called the Third Rome, because Rome of antiquity and the Eastern Roman Empire were frequently called the First Rome and Second Rome because of their capitals being in, well, Rome and Constantinople. It became obvious at the time to similarly style Russia by its capital of Moscow and call it the Third Rome. And Ivan III began styling himself Tsar, which is a word deriving from Caesar, so you can see the connection between the Roman Empire and Russia.
Yeah.
Now, a man called Philotheus wrote an epistle directed at Vasily III, so he wrote him a letter, basically. Do you want to give us a bit of an introduction to who Philotheus is?
He was a member of the Yelizarov monastery. Philotheus' letters reached Vasily III and Ivan IV, also known as Ivan the Terrible.
Right.
Philotheus explained away the fall by saying that Rome had sinned due to deviating towards heresy.
Okay.
This was the first Rome. The second Rome, Constantinople, had already fallen by this time.
Right. This idea of a third Rome had already kind of been there in a eulogy of a ruler of Tver, with comparisons made between this ruler and the emperors of antiquity. So again, you've got the idea of in the East there is a continuity between Rome and what's here now. So in summary, Philotheus mentioned there had been two Romes which had fallen, a third which stood now, and that there would not be a fourth. However, fairly obviously, the Third Rome is not there now, because there would no longer be any Tsars after 1917 with the Russian Revolution. Given that Istanbul, for example, carried on after 1453 but isn't considered the active Rome by the Russians, it makes sense that the idea of Moscow as the Third Rome couldn't extend past 1917, if it's even a valid claim in the first place. So what I'm saying is you could argue there's no Tsars left or no rulers who could claim the title, just as there were no rulers in Constantinople who were the Roman Empire after 1453. I'm sure, however, that you could argue, if you follow this idea, about how many Romes there have even been. For instance, just off the top of my head, we have this idea the Ottomans claimed to be Emperor of Rome, and there's also the Greek Megali idea, which thought about a theoretical restoration of Byzantine territory to the Kingdom of Greece. And this isn't even to mention the Holy Roman Empire itself. However, for our title, we're just going to extend the image of three Romes created by Philotheus. This is an oversimplification, but we won't be covering the material discussed here for quite a while yet.
The point is, I think, is that Autocrat is now being declared as the Fourth Rome.
Yep.
To put it another way, we are declaring ourselves Empress and Emperor of an entirely digital Fourth Rome.
Yep, exactly.
We are getting crowned. You are now Emperor Vince of Autocrat, and I am Empress Cathy of Autocrat.
Exactly. Now, we do actually have a source telling us how this coronation would have been performed. This is by Constantine VII, who lived between 905 and 959. We're not going to be focusing on the many acclamations and so on, so the details around it. We're going to be looking at the actual crowning, which would take place in Hagia Sophia in Constantinople. The patriarch would pray over the crown and put it on the emperor's head to great shouts. So he's being acclaimed at this point while the crowning's taking place. The emperor would then head into the room where robes were put on and sit on a throne and was praised by the nobility. So, the digital patriarch has now handed me the crown after this, and I put it on your head, and you are now the Empress of the Romans.
Exactly.
There is also an extension of this process for junior emperors, where the patriarch would first crown the senior emperor, and then the junior emperor would have the crown placed on his head by the senior. However, there is still yet more news in that we actually have a poll where you can vote on our elevation. I say vote quote unquote because we are going to be doing this in the style of Napoleon Bonaparte, who was first consul of France, then first consul of France for life, and then was proclaimed Emperor of the French in May 1804. We won't go into the details of how he got this position, but basically the idea was that elevating him would create stability in France for the ideas of the revolution, even if he should die, because people didn't want the nation to sink back into chaos again should he get assassinated. Now, Napoleon set up votes for both his first consul for life elevation in 1802 and then his emperor elevation in 1804, and both of them are massively skewed. So the result in 1804 was 99.93% in favour, and in 1802 it was 99.76% in favour. Now, I'm no expert, you might think differently about this, but I would say that's fairly skewed and unlikely.
It might be.
So we're going to be putting up a poll in that style. The general point I'm making is the public have been used to rubber stamp elections before, why not do it again now for the purposes of Autocrat? There will be a post on our website when this goes live, as well as votes on Instagram, Spotify and the YouTube community page. You will then all have a month to vote, and we will pull this together and announce the results in a month's time on the 3rd of May 2024.
Nice.
So I think that brings us to the end of this episode, right?
Yeah.
Well, we hope you all enjoyed the episode, or our digital coronation, and thank you for listening.
Yeah, thank you. This was Emperor Vince and Empress Cassie at your service.
Yep.
Or not.
Or not. And with that, have a great week, everyone.
Have a great week.
Well, that was fun, right?
That was fun.
Yeah. I just thought it'd be a nice way to actually celebrate April Fool's Day.